Daria, it's your microphone that's humming.
Really?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this
Hello.
panel about bridging bridging the gap between business and VR for this
Technology.
technology. That's correct. I'm sorry, I was a bit confused. I was looking for a missing person. We miss a few panels members, but that's no problem. I think you will. We'll all do fine. Well, I think if it's best if you start introducing yourself, because I'm just a panel member and I'm just a stupid developer and I don't know anything about business. I only know about technology. So shall we do it clockwise? Roland, you first, then Daria, then Bruno. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So my name is Roland Smenk. I'm a creative developer from the Netherlands. I've met Joost a few times in real life, but not this year yet.
Okay, I get a lot of backup. Marisha, I think it's your mic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on, Roland.
Okay. So a creative developer with a lot of experience in 3D development, and lately I'm doing more and more HoloLens development. I'm creator of the HoloLens Shaded Pack that's available in the Unity Asset Store, and the 3D Spectator tool that's also available there. Yeah, and I'm doing HoloLens development and augmented reality development with iPad and Android tablets, etc. And I like to be on the forefront, so prototyping, working with new interactions, and that kind of stuff.
Okay, Daria, if you want to unmute yourself, thank you. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes. My name is Daria, and I'm the founder of the company called Cleverbooks. We are working in the field of the augmented reality and immersion technologies for the education sector. So my big part is understanding how the innovation can be applied for the education sector, how to approach and help the education sector to realize that there is a need for this technology. And also, I'm really a big fan of product development and putting the innovation in place.
Bruno, your turn.
Perfect. Yes. Hello, everyone. Bruno Capuano here from Canada. Not Canadian. You are not in the accent. I came from Spain. I lead innovation in Canada, which basically means in a company, which basically means I try to connect the dots between business and any cool emerging technology. I am the go-to person to try to make this happen. And I've been playing around with HoloLens because I've been a developer for a long time. So I really play around and learn new stuff for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's been amazing. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Marisha, we should please unmute yourself and introduce yourself because, well, you introduce yourself again, just like in the last session.
Sorry, I had to take another headset off. Yeah, so I am Mariska Zakaria. I am a Canadian, well, it's complicated. I guess I'm Indian Canadian living in Germany or Berlin since the last year. I work as a VR developer currently for a language learning company, helping make educational VR content or language learning content. That's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what I just messed up a little bit is the topic is bridging the gap, the bridge between business and technology. The first thing I want to ask you is, how do you see that? Is that like I'm a developer and I need to connect to business logic, or are we going to make sure that whatever I am creating is actually having business value? Because I saw this title and I was like, yeah, interesting, but what do they exactly mean? I want to. Who wants to take this up? How do you see that? Volunteers, please.
I can share my point of view if you want.
Please.
And I also see the big difference with the new HoloLens, the HoloLens 2 versus HoloLens 1. When the first HoloLens arrived, we were very excited. We tried to do, in my company, I work in Avanade, we tried to do a lot of stuff. We tried to create a lot of stuff from scratch. We're a big company, global company. We've been doing Microsoft solutions for the last 20 years. And we realized that we didn't have the skills. So it was very hard for us to move away from the proof of concept stage to really add some value. In the last year, we see that we have some package. We have some already pre-packaged solutions like Remote Assist or Dynamic 365 guides. They're already very powerful solutions that as a solution integrator can easily give us the chance to go to a client and start to add some value on top. And now that these tools are also evolving and have some integration points, we can create a lot of stuff. Saying that, that's as a base, it's still, for me as a developer, and again, I'm a C# developer, I am not have this 3D Unity background learning, but I'm not there. It's complicated for a standard development company, a business solution company, to get into the mixed reality world and start to create solutions. But it's opportunity, so it's a nice balance of challenge and opportunity. Any thoughts on that?
That's an interesting point of view that I, as a developer, recognize. Do any of you other people have something to add to this point of view? Daria?
Yeah, I can add something here. So obviously, there is opportunity to create 2 types of things and produce 2 types of things in any industry. And one can be produced because the one who wanted to create this specific thing, software or anything, thought that it could be really a cool thing to have, but he was the only person, or maybe a couple of his friends, believed that this is something, there's a business opportunity there. Or the other way to produce things is to focus on the customer. So you need to understand that when you are developing something that that is going to be useful for the end user, because at the end of the day, if you want to create the business, that needs to be something useful for the end user, then you need to create that with the user in mind. So that's why I think that from the perspective of the business, the opportunity to create there is a need to focus on what customer wants and how customer will apply your product in practice. Because I can go also from what we do in the company, and the Cleverbooks create the products. First, we try to create the product the way we saw them, that they're going to be useful for education. But at the end of the day, the customer has driven us in a different way, and we had to iterate the product. So that's why I think two ways in general. And you need if you want to have business, you need to focus on the customer.
Okay, so indeed we're defining this. By the way, the subject not as technology, but indeed bridging the gap between what the customer wants actually and what technology can offer. So I wonder if we all been there. We're like Bruno said, we got the HoloLens. We all get excited. And I think we all made some errors. Well, not the HoloLens, not all of the HoloLens, because I know Marisha has just given a great talk about how she could use the stuff in education. But maybe when we all started it, we all made errors. I mean, what are the most common mistakes you see in this kind of focusing on technology versus focusing on what the customer wants? Who wants to take this one? That's very silent. Am I making such a difficult?
I'm gonna go. Sorry, there was some outdoor noise, but I'll go. I do apologize. I should close my window soon, though. But I always think, at least I kind of talked about it briefly in my talk or the Q&A session, where there's a lot going on with how, I guess, at least I'm speaking more on the VR side than say AR, MR in this case, but I always think about how a lot of it is designed with like a certain demographic, and then who also is actually like testing out your product or who the other consumers are nowadays. And there's both design elements as well as like elements that are so related to gaming, and which makes sense to me and it makes sense to many other developers, at least in the experiences I've talked to with other developers, that sometimes when it comes to showcasing things, like I've done both, like besides trade shows and like galleries or festivals and stuff, you get a wide variety of people and a wide variety of possible consumers. And there's a lot of elements to that where you realize, oh, this is like such a gaming mindset or term or design. And then you have to also think about like other people also checking out the work. Like, especially in my case, with educational games, like you're not going to also just get gaming people. You're going to get people who also want to learn something. And you have to like think about the approach around that, like especially like inclusive design. And I find like certain tech things are just so, I think sometimes you have to like also think a little outside the bubble with that, because there's also been cases of headsets that don't even fit. I think it was for more of a gender thing, but how it doesn't fit certain women properly as well. And there's many cases around that, like both, and I think, why am I forgetting the term? But like, not eyesight, why am I, a peripheral version? No, I'm forgetting the term now, but just like how people like see or perceive things is like also different, and how that can also affect your experience is also something to think about, at least in like the business side, with the challenges you might face with the consumer and the technology.
Yes, and if I want to add, that's an amazing point. If I want to add also on top of it, if you are like me, and again, oh my God, this is going to be recorded and people are going to laugh about this, but if you are like me, an old developer, we've been doing an example application for Windows for 20 years, and we've been doing crappy application. We started with, these Windows forms with a lot of controls, with a lot of buttons and trees. Lucky for us, in 10 years ago, designers started to work with us and say, hey, the user needs to have experience. The user needs to use your app. The same with the HoloLens. We started, in our case, we started going very raw. So we started to create on the fly, but we never think about the user. And we started to work with people, amazing teams that are thinking in this experience, as you say, are thinking in this user. forget about your developer mindset, forget about your gaming mindset. This is an educational, this is a professional, this is a business application, this is the experience. So the full concept of experience, it's new for us around the mixed reality world. And it's also a new, it's a greenfield. There is no rules here. So we can create a lot of stuff. So again, it's a chance to forget and learn, forget and learn. And I think it's important because at the end of the day, we want to bring some value. So we can create an amazing whatever, but we want to bring some value for the final user. And we need to bring things, experience designs, roles that for us in example are very, very new. We didn't have the need to work with these roles in the past. So it's a challenge to see how we can work together, how we can collaborate on all of these new scenarios.
Yeah, and there we touched on a rather sensitive subject. I heard the word inclusivity. We all know the rather painful example of the very first Connect not recognizing people of color, which was very painful. I also have personally experienced, I'm white as you see, but my colored friend couldn't even get to a automatic soap dispenser to work because it only apparently was tested on whiteheads. Did any of you people specifically take steps to prevent, well, stupid mistakes like that? Because it's something that's easily happens because of, well, how the most of the programmers are. These are mostly people like me, old white male folks. How does anyone have your ideas on how to tackle that?
So knowing the AR and VR side, but I think that Mariska, you said that you are also from Canada. Canada is kind of an amazing group of people from all around the globe. And you notice my accent. So a couple of years ago, we did an application, and this experience for the HoloLens includes some voice recognition. And English is amazing, but when you have an accent, sometimes it's a challenge. So we need to play around a lot with the speech recognition engine we want to use to really, really support a huge set of demographics, because you have Spanish English accent, you have, I don't know, German English accent, Indian English accent, French English accent, or whatever. And just a simple thing that is supposed to be already working, like the speech recognition, was a challenge. Was something that we didn't even think at the beginning, but when we started to do user testing, we realized, oh my God, this is not working very good with Bruno. Why? Because Bruno is from Spain, so he has this accent. And I'm sure that in the process, there are a lot of other lesson learned. I don't have anyone in my mind right now, but this is something small, like not small, but something like speech recognition is something that you need to also stop and think, hey, you maybe want to work with users / whoever that is going to have some accent. How do you want to handle that? I don't know if anyone else has other experience like that.
Yeah, I can add here a little bit, because technology is amazing, and sometimes it's super advanced. So, and there are two aspects, in my opinion, from the business perspective, need to be taken. So when you are thinking of the technology, it needs to have the customer touch, as I have mentioned in my previous comments, but also it needs to have a sort of time relevant touch. And what I mean by this is that if we follow how the music recording was done, it's the vinyl, then we have this cassette, then we have this, they will have this big cassette, then smaller one, then CD, and so on, so MP3, and so on and so forth. So it was a gradual development, although the technology was there. And if we talk about, for example, augmented reality, this technology was born like decades ago. It just several years that it starts growing, because the community and humanity and people are getting ready for this technology. And I think that's one of the important things, to marry, for the business perspective, those two: the time relevancy by having the technology applied when your end user is ready, and being in touch with the end user to create the product that will be actually suitable to solve the problems that user is facing, that this technology can support. Because I'm working with the developers all the time, and they are absolutely great and creative people, and they know all those possible ways to use these advanced technologies and how cool they are. And if they add this specific feature here, it would be absolutely stunning. But sometimes it's not actually suitable to the business situation, and then it needs to be maybe somehow reworked or somehow looked at a different angle to be able to applicable to the business. So, and the good question, should we focus on customers, should we focus on technology? I think on both, and also on the situation that that you're applying to, problem that you're trying to solve, and if it's going to be really helpful, because you can create anything, that's no problem. The question is like, what's the purpose that you're trying to follow? Just to prove that you can create anything, or you want to solve some problem of your end customer with the technology.
Well, that's a great perspective. Mariska, if I might bother you once again, because I have just followed your great session. I know you do something with language processing. I presume that what Bruno said for you is a real problem, like people, English people talking Spanish, Spanish people talking English, German speaking English. How did you go about? Did you use an enormous test set? Can you elaborate on that?
So there's, I guess, two things. One that's, I guess I'll go more into the specific side of where we kind of worked with it is, yeah, a lot of it, I'd say the biggest challenge we came with, at least in the audio side, which is what I thought of what Bruno said, was thinking of, there we had like a whole exercise that we're testing, which is speech to text, like how you pronounce a word properly. Like you've seen this on Duolingo, if anyone's used it, or other language learning software. It's like, how would you pronounce this word, and did you get it correctly? And that was a very interesting challenge. So we were initially using Google sources alongside Unity, but there an interesting case scenario came up where we were testing this with Spanish with my other teammate, and with him, he's a native Spanish speaker. So it was easy for him to get everything calibrated to his voice. And then when it came to testing it on other people, like French speakers or myself, a native English speaker, it was really interesting because sometimes it just didn't even work. And it was really funny realizing it's like, oh, right, like how pronunciation, like when we set something up for pronunciation or voice to text, we really need to think about who is like what angle people are coming in with their accents. So this was, again, more on the prototyping side, but we were getting people to like record their voices so that we can just almost in a sort of machine learning, but not really sense, was get enough voices to get more calibrations for the voice to be like, okay, here are these kind of voices that you're trying to say, like the word cat in Spanish, for instance. And that was something we're kind of working with or trying to circumvent it, where it's like, okay, we can't just use one developer's voice. And that can very much be the case where whoever's programming, especially around that thing, it's like, oh, you don't think about all these other cultural stuff or this stuff. And this can also happen with writing. Like I've had interesting discussions with my team. We're all from different countries and all speak different different native tongues. And it's been really interesting to be like, okay, but what would you call that item? Or what would you consider this? Because the example or the current thing we're working on is like a kitchen game. And so that would be like, what would you call, like, how would you define cooking? Because cooking is such a vague word. And then you have to realize, oh, there's like different translations. And then how does that apply in a game, for instance, like how that can affect even gameplay with like everyone speaking different languages. But more importantly, I think the voice one is an important one, which we realized we need to really think about so that it becomes more inclusive when we start calibrating more voices in.
And then you also run into interesting problems because the process of cooking is a very different process in, for instance, the United States of America or in Italy, where they can spend hours and hours and hours of preparing a meal and then even more hours of eating it. So, yeah, right.
Luckily, you're just taking orders, though, so that's good. But yeah, it was just very interesting. I never thought, especially in my case with German, that's the language I'm learning now. It's yeah, the different terminology or something, because it's like, what is frying versus cooking or boiling and this? And I'm like, yeah, I guess like sometimes I'm just like, I'm just cooking something, but I guess there are really specific terms you really need to define if you want to make it into a gameplay perspective. So, and yeah, you're right. Sometimes you need, say, hours for a sauce versus in the US and Canada, it's usually like you just dump it in and give it 5 minutes or something. Yeah, it's really varied for sure per country or culture.
Yeah. Also, now you're living in Germany. Have you been introduced to grillen, like baking worst outside, sausages outside on an open fire, preferably in the wild?
I mean, I thankfully in Canada, maybe not everywhere in Canada, but it's a huge thing to barbecue. So I thankfully was lucky to grow up with that. But
Okay.
sadly in Berlin, and I can say this from another friend because I was at their place, there's a lot of stricter rules in the city when it comes to doing that.
Yeah,
So
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. In the if you go more rural countries, it's a very usual just to go outside in the woods. There are fire pits and stuff. Okay, I'm diverting a bit. Oh, something is changing on my screen. What are some common techniques you use to bridge the gap between technology and business? Do you have special people? Do you have special training? Do you have a special approach? Who doesn't want to take that? Take a point for that.
You can take the lead if you want, not in the technical part. We can come later, and I'm sure that Roland can help me with this. But as I said, we started to work with a set of designers. All the designers, they are not designers, they are user experience people. They think they are not just designers, they have a lot of other skills. But they are the ones who teach me how basically, before starting something, we need to spend a lot of time with the users, thinking what we want to do, explaining them what a device can do, what the technology can do, what is the business need, so we can all work together with this. So we spent really a lot of time just with the whiteboard and post-it, doing design thinking sessions, creating ideas, creating wireframes, trying to figure out what we can do before we start there. And again, we are supposed to do the same in the typical software technology development. But here it's kind of different because it's a new standard. So really what I see here is that at the beginning, we need to spend a lot of time with the final users, with our clients, explaining them what we can do. Because sometimes they think that, hey, we are going to pick up this 2D app and create an augmented reality app like this and move this to the virtual or whatever, or something like this. And it's not like this. So in example, we are working right now with a couple of scenarios to do inspection with HoloLens. We're in real time, use the HoloLens camera. We analyze using machine learning, I don't know, and we can see if an electric pole is tilted or not. And if it's tilted, we need to raise a warning. But we also need to figure out if it's tilted good enough to raise this warning, and we raise this warning, connect the backends, and it's just a class. We'll only give a couple of visual clues, but until it gets there, it takes a lot of time to really understand what we can do, what they can do, what is the device, and these sort of things. And there is for me, the best challenge here, which also is amazing, is the chance to work with these user experience people who are basically manage us to balance technology and business in a good way.
Okay, we have a question from a Pratmesh Rane. I don't hope I messed up his name too much. And he asks, I created an AR app for restaurants, similar to Kabak. I don't know that, but I suppose that's a restaurant, where I visit to market my product. Everyone would love it, but they didn't buy it. How could I make my product more user-friendly? That's indeed a problem. Everybody loves stuff, but nobody wants to buy it. Do you have any perspective on that, on how things to make more sellable or people actually buying it?
I can give here an insight. So there are two options for you what you can do. You can go the way by just asking why wouldn't you buy it instead of offering people to buy, because they might, if you say like, oh, can you buy, would you buy my product, they would say, oh yeah, it's amazing, it has this and these features. You need to understand the reason why they're not buying, so just start asking questions why they haven't bought. It's the direct way of approaching the customer and seeing some market segment there. And the second option you can do, you can create the focus groups and see what's the reason yourself. So a focus group can be based on the customers, on your target audience. So you just select those. If you sell, I don't know what Kabak does, but if you sell that to the restaurants, let's say, and that's your target audience, I would go and select several of them and give them to use the opportunity to use the software for a certain period of time free of charge, and then get their feedback. And if, for example, let's say you give them to use this software for 3 months and they don't buy it still, then you might ask them why they wouldn't buy, and that might be a good feedback for you. What modifications you need to do to make sure it's going to be sellable and business oriented for the market.
Let's remove this comment. Thank you for your comment on that. Anybody else want to add something to this? Otherwise, I have another question. Let's see. Now, while we're touching on the subject of monetization, how to make sure if you make something like an investment, like I'm going to build something, how to keep the balance between the business side and the work on the technical side, because like you correctly said, it's always very easy to make cool and nice things, but you can spend days or weeks on a very cool and nice thing, but that doesn't really help you with creating a something that's business-wise sustainable. Who has a suggestion to how to make sure your investments don't go to the wrong things when you're building this kind of apps? Bruno, you usually have a good idea about this, so would you like to give it a shot?
Yeah, so for example, there are a couple of different types of applications that we are doing for clients. There are kind of single-use applications. So we create, I don't know, if we think about Christmas is coming, because we just move away from Halloween, and we want to create experience around Christmas for a company that they are going to use in a mall, like in the days where we can go to the mall and all of these things. We can create something that's going to be used for a couple of months. Then we have January 1st, Christmas season is over, and we throw this up, and that's it. So this is type 1 application, kind of seasonal application, a very specific ones to promote some marketing ideas or whatever. And then we have the ongoing application, final user application that will require a different approach. We will require everything that we learn in the software engineering process that we've been doing for the last 40 years, how we can evolve the application, how we can maintain, distribute. There is a full set of stories. And it's complicated because, again, even I can't remember who said that AI, it's catching up right now. It seems that it's catching up right now, but it's been running for a long time. We see that in example companies like we are doing software, we're still learning the best way to do this. We're still learning the best way to create something, and then not just create and deploy, maintain this, get feedback, update the application to new needs. And it's a huge, huge challenge. I mean, we know how to do standard business application, the WAPI application that you use and you download. And this is a challenge to see how we're going to do that, because also we need the balance between let's do something amazing, and we need to have some profits here. We need to have some revenue. These skills for us are used expensive. We are not used to work with 3D modeling people. It's a new challenge. How we are handling this stuff, how we are handling distributed teams. There is a lot of challenge here that they are not easy to fix, but again, this opportunity to learn. So, an example, in this process, geography location, it's freaking important because we're dealing with huge set of assets to be shared, to be consumed in different people's working in teams in North America, Europe, and Asia, in example. For us, it's new. I know that in the gaming industry, they've been doing this for a long time. So this is the chance for us to learn from them how they manage and how they deal these scenarios. I don't know, how do you handle distributed working with different teams and big files? Git is not good enough for that.
I see. Thank you. Well, I've been wondering, we're all talking about companies making big things, but Roland, I know you are a freelance developer, so you're basically a little bit of the old man or old person out. How do you make sure that the stuff you make and the clients you find, that you actually make the stuff the client needs and the client wants to have, and how does that create value for your customer and also for you, because you basically live by the hour? Can you give a little bit of insight in that?
Well, yeah. Mostly, I'm hired by companies to join in the project, and I like to be involved as soon as in the project as possible, because in the brainstorming phase, we can diverge in all kinds of directions for solutions to a certain client problem. But for my HoloLens work, we typically already are funneled into that something needs to be solved with HoloLens or with augmented reality. So so then technology comes first, and we often do workshops to let clients see first, let them experience how it feels to actually work with the HoloLens, and then the ideas for that company typically come afterwards. So so that there's for all of us, I think there's a whole target in evangelizing the existence of this technology, and if you can show people what you can achieve with HoloLens, or what the possibilities are, then the ideas start coming next, and so that's the way to approach it. So technology first, and then thinking what kind of use case
the usual
can we
approach.
find within
I
our
found out
company.
Well,
if it's technically driven, if there's some use case that can be solved in different ways, then either I can end up doing things with projection mapping. For instance, if you want to tell a story about things involving food, we were talking about cooking. There was this project where we were imagining, okay, we want to tell a story about the history of food within this city, and then we came up with totally different solutions where there would be projections on plates, and by turning these plates, you could go through the different steps in the stories. So at that time there wasn't HoloLens, but I don't think that would have been a suitable solution. But so there are different ways to approach this. So you could approach it technology first, like with the workshops, or also story first or use case first, and then see what kind of elements need emphasizing and can become part of an interactive installation. Because I'm not necessarily tied to building HoloLens, because I do projection mapping and all kinds of Arduino projects, etc. So I can evolve in different directions depending on where the story goes. So I think there are different ways of approaching or finding business, for that matter. And what I did with my assets that are in the Unity asset store, that's it's totally different, because I noticed that there were a lot of developers with a common Microsoft background starting. Okay, we do everything Microsoft, and then we go into and now we also pick up Microsoft HoloLens development, and they learned, okay, I know C#, but if I go into Unity, okay, there's shaders, I stay away from that. And then I thought, okay, so maybe there's a really there's some niche market to help other developers in that. So I'm actually not targeting end clients, but other developers, and that's something that may be a spin-off of a project. So noticing, okay, that's interest in that, and I can generate business out of that by targeting other developers, because there are a lot of Unity developers. So that's a different way of approaching it, reaching your peers.
You're being a bit too modest, because you also made this great spectator view thing using a Kinect, and that has business value for business people as well, because you can just simply show off what you make. But that's another point. I have an interest coming to that. I have an interesting question. Actually, I like to have an answer of all of you, and I don't know who wants to start, because like Roland, I'm primarily a technologist, and like what I always notice is the problem between those people not having, me and business people not having a common language. How have you gone about teaching business people technology enough and technologists enough feel for the business to make your special project or company work? Marisha, would you want to try on that first?
Sure. It's interesting. I've had, like, before the company I worked with, one of my first jobs, especially as a VR dev, was going to trade shows, and a lot of it was it's basically, I felt like kind of working for a media or ad agency, trying to get clients, like, convince them basically that whatever we make for them, kind of advertising their product in a way, would get more people's, like, emails and stuff throughout, like, say, CES or South by Southwest. And a lot of the, I guess, like, and what pleases customers, honestly, within the technology itself, is just, I mean, it sounds kind of corny to say, but I always think of novelty in some sense. Like, this was me as well, because you mentioned Arduino and stuff earlier. When I was learning and studying in university using that, doing physical computing stuff, I liked also that novelty of, like, hey, you can interact with something, and then that something else happens there. And a lot of it was just purely that tech side, where it's like, okay, here's a VR, like, I guess the example work I did, there was, like, I think 20 by 20 meters of space we used, and we used a mixture of motion capture and VR, and that was, like, my first time really working with that. So how someone can move around a space, and instead of necessarily having to use a controller, you had to pick up objects, like, it would kind of track your hands using motion capture gloves. And there was, I guess, novelty in that too. And we also had, it was the first time for me working with, like, backpack, like VR backpacks. Like, this is way before the Quest. So you can see within that era, it was like, okay, what are these, like, cool technology things where, like, someone feels like you're stepping into, like, a sci-fi type world. And a lot of people also got a kick out of that. So that was definitely one way to clients, where it's like, okay, honestly, if you have this really cool thing where people, even from the booths, are very interested in that, like, it's like, oh, what's that thing? Yeah, a lot of just that showy factor. And sometimes how we'd even get more people involved or interested if there was some downturn or downtime was we'd just go on it. Like, we'd be like, oh, pretend to be an audience, like someone just going in randomly, and then people would see what's happening. It's like, oh, like, what's that thing? And that was kind of another way of, like, showing clients, it's like, nope, there's people coming. As long as someone kind of sees what's happening, like, you really kind of tease that factor. Because I feel like, I mean, in the end, it's just really that visual factor of that technology to really entice those clients was a huge takeaway from when I was developing, and also trying to please clients as well on that side.
Okay, thank you. Daria, how have you gone about technologists and business people together find a common ground?
That's a very good question, and it's extremely debatable question, I would say. The point here is that you need always to have a translator. It's like people are talking different languages, and you need to have someone who understands both in order to bring the message to both sides. Sometimes, and I still currently we experience that at Cleverbooks, that person who is fully into technology might not understand the business sense of the side of things. And the business side of things can can invent something or come up with ideas that are not really suitable to apply with the technology that is being developed or with the product. So for me, it was a learning curve because I was always curious how you can translate and understand both sides. And in order to do this, you need to have the understanding of technology. If you're not, for example, a developer or coder, you still need to understand and how things are done and have at least the basic overview of what's happening or the basic kind of idea of that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to translate it into business. You can be extremely strong on both sides. That's what I have learned from my professional career. Because you can either understand really well the business side and slightly understand the technical part, or you can be like super cool in technical part and barely understand the business one. You can obviously learn, but you can't be the professional in both of them. So that's why I think it's important to have those brainstorming sessions between those two sides of the business, and then there will be something good coming out of it. So that's from my perspective.
Well, thank you very much. So basically, you have an in between, like a negotiator. Bruno.
Exactly, but somebody has to. Yeah, there is no way out.
And was that your role? I'm interested in that.
So I'm dealing with the product development, but not on the technical side, but more with the business perspective. And I have to work with the technical people and non-technical people in order to bring something together so it's going to be suitable for the market.
Well, I'm not supposed to vote opinions, but I know us technical people can be difficult.
Or trust me, when those sides clash, everybody has point of view and they think that their point of view is more important than the other side's point of view. Somebody needs to be like a mediator of all this.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bruno, how have you gone about to make your technical people and business people work together?
Yes, that's an amazing question, and it's usually a point of pain. So sorry from the technical side to all not technical people if we give you a bad time. We are usually too technical. We love technology. We think that we can solve anything with technology, and we need to figure out a way to do things. And an example, the topic that just was talking about, that when we work with the client to help a field service agent go in to fix an electric pole and using the HoloLens and looking at the pole and take a look if the pole is tilted or not. At some moment when we started to think about and talk about this with the client, someone say, and do we need to use a HoloLens? Can we use our phone? And say, yes, you are right. We don't need a $4,000 device there. We can use your own device. We can do this with ARCore or ARKit or whatever in the phone and solve this. So that's the kind of the happy moment where technology and the business get all together and find this scenario. And it's all about of talking and showing. And what we find is very, very important is have early feedback. As soon as we can talk about something and try and test something, go there, talk to the business. And I am talking from the technical side. Talk to the business, show to the business, get their feedback, get whatever that we can get from them is very, very important for us. And this is the way that we are basically moving forward, trying to work together. And I really, really like Daria's idea of the moderator because we have that. We have someone who tries to be kind of on top of this with an impartial view, trying to everybody kind of a kindergarten. You have the kids playing around and everybody needs to be happy. It's not the perfect analogy, but it's something like this. And it really, really helps. But constant feedback and learning from both sides, it's what is working for us.
Thank you. Roland, any words to add with this?
Well, it's matching technology people to business people. I think it also comes with age. I don't know how you feel about it, Joost, but I've been in a lot of discussions, and it's hard it's easy not to be listening to each other and talk within your own area of expertise and not trying to understand each other. So I think that's where the most profit can be gained if you try to listen and understand what the actual problem is. So. And that's why we are having these workshops, and it's of utmost importance to create a safe environment where everybody can, because typically business people and technology people have a different kind of mentality or different personalities, and to create a good match, there needs to be a safe environment so everybody can be heard, and also learn from each other why some things are important, because typically what I often run into is that people try to fill in. Okay, I need buttons in several different colors, but it will probably be hard, and that's not hard. But then they say, okay, but you could also easily do this, and that turns out to be hard. So you need to teach them in what things are easy to achieve, and which things are more risky or harder to achieve. And sometimes as developers, our heart goes out to a certain solution, but often it's safer to take a more simpler solution to be on the safe side, and that can fulfill the client use case in a much less riskier way. So no. So these are my thoughts that I come up now. Okay.
I think that was actually a very good point you made. Like for us developers. Well, if I look at the clock, I think we've come to the end of our 50 minutes. Actually, we're exactly at 50 minutes. So I would thank you very much for your time and your effort. Lots of you actually did first a session and then directly a panel after that. So I imagine you all are entitled to a cup of coffee and a little bit of rest. And I hope you will enjoy the last session of this great event. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next time.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.